Morning, everybody, and welcome to EMA Knowledge Share. Couple of things I want to sort of flag and have a chat about, and before I sort of open up to Ed and Elliot. But Tuesday next week, Mark at Goldman Sachs, one of our senior leader team, will lead a discussion on back to live and hybrid events. He's got a number of questions that he'd like to ask and share, and talk about their approach of what they're doing, what he's thinking, how he's approaching stuff, international events, etc. So that'll be a real good conversation kicker. So that's next Tuesday. And then also on Thursday the 4th of March at 1 p.m, we're having a very important discussion around and on sustainability. We're going to be joined by an old colleague of mine, Melanie Delaplanche, who runs a business called Sustainable Effect, and an industry advisor group, and some of our working group with EMA who are focusing on sustainability. It's a really important topic, and it's one that kind of perhaps has dropped off the radar because everything's been virtual. But now as we start to look to come back to live, we need to look at what we can do, how we're doing it, how can we affect the supply chain, etc. And in fact, sustainability came up on a discussion last week about a key indicator from corporates on returning to live, because people have seen the impact from their commitment on sustainability they're making, and so that will be part of the decision-making process. So sustainability is one of the two key initiatives that EMA are driving this year, both sustainability and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We've got working groups working on both. So we're going to hand over. We're not going to hand over because I'm going to tee you up first, Ed and Elliot. So to sort of tee up the discussion today, there's two areas that I'd like us to talk about. And one, of course, is the journey back to live, and what you guys are seeing, because you're getting inquiries and contacting. So what you're seeing, what you're advising, what you can see as sort of hybrid, virtual, the appetite for the merging of the two, and when. So should we say what the new norm will be? And I think there will be definitely a new norm, short term, medium term, long term. So it'd be good to sort of touch on that. We'll also ask the question around sustainability and that corporate commitments to this. Do you think that will influence the future of what people are looking for and the types of venues that they're looking for? And also that does link into the DEI objectives. So I'd like to talk about that, and also then Zoom fatigue. It's come up on a number of discussions, a number of brainstorming sessions with EMA. Everyone's asking, has anybody got a new idea of what we can do online with our team, with our clients? So I think there's definitely internal, external, very different sort of scenarios. But anything we can do. We've seen wine courses, we've seen cookery courses. We're seeing different types of events, but I'm sure you've been asked this, and in fact, I know you told me that you created a sort of a sub business, or not a sub business, but another string to your bow, should we say, then around I think you call it marketing events or marketplace. Sorry. So it'd be good to look at that and talk about that and see what you think is really working, why. And I think we also need to dig into who the audience is, a bit of this sort of human psychology. I mean, I know there's people who love to go to things online. Even there's people who say, do I have to? Do I need to? Do I want to? So there's a big difference. I think there's a lot about sort of personality. So with all that ramble, Ed, I'm going to sort of hand over to you to sort of start the discussion. So let's focus about the get back to live and the stuff that you have done, these certifications, I forgot the name of, but you created a process of training. I believe that now has been officially accredited and certificated. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Well, I think first thing to say is this has been a good week for events at last. Monday, I think I certainly was not expecting the news to be quite as it was on Monday. I think I was more pessimistic. And actually what was announced on Monday, I think I was very kind of pleasantly surprised about. I don't think anyone is getting carried away. I think things could very easily change. But what we've had, and what we had on Monday, which we haven't had before, and we have had optimism before. There were times last year where I was feeling pretty optimistic. People were planning to do events within kind of 2 or 3 months or whatever it was. We were talking about those government pilots, and they caused a lot of optimism. But what we didn't have last year, and what we do have this year, is firstly, we have the events sector explicitly referenced by the government at every stage of that roadmap that they announced. Don't forget that a year ago, never once were events or conferences or the event sector referenced by the government. Now they've been very explicitly referenced, and they've been referenced in relation to actual dates. So those dates might change, but I think the fact that we are being acknowledged as a sector is a massive step forward, and we effectively have a green light to start planning. And we all need to do that, very conscious of the fact that things might change, and we need to stay really, really flexible. We need to have plan Bs. And I know that not every business is going to jump straight in and start planning in-person events again. But yeah, I think overall we can be pretty pleased with this week. So that I'm really, really encouraged about. I do think, sorry, Richard, in answer to your question, I do think the events world is changed probably forever. I think we have learned so much in the last year and accelerated so quickly towards a place that I think we probably would have got to at some point anyway, but I think it's just sped it up so quickly. And we have all learned so much that we didn't know previously. And we are now better able to offer value to our event attendees and our sponsors and our clients and everyone else because of this new kind of skill set that we've all kind of learned, and this greater kind of understanding of the way in which technology can support the live event experience. So I think it will change forever. My personal view, I've been wrong many times before, but is that there will hardly be any content-led or product-led events in the future that don't have some kind of hybrid technology-enabled element, because I think virtual events have shown us, or virtual events have given us these benefits that are just not going to go away. So, reach and scale, diversity, so like inclusion, diversity, and sustainability certainly as well. These things aren't going to go away. And I think if you are delivering a message at an event, whether it's something important for your clients or announcing your objectives as a company or celebrating success or doing training or engagement for employees internally, there will always be people that can't attend those events. And it's always, I think, going to be beneficial to broadcast that content to people that can't be in there in person. I mean, taking it very simply, you're probably going to want to record most of that content anyway. If you're going to be recording it, why not broadcast it? Why not live stream? So I think things there will be certain types of events that are the same as they always were. I think the more kind of, socially, getting people together for some drinks and that kind of FaceTime or Christmas parties, that type of thing probably won't change much. But anything where there's a content agenda or product, I think they'll never be the same again.
Agreed. Yeah. No, and I think the industry have been very slow to sort of shift to, historically, the journey we were on to shift to a more sort of technology supported industry, and there's been people we've hung on to. This is the way we've done it. This is the way we've always done it, and it's slow to change. And crisis creates opportunity. Crisis creates change, and this is where we see ourselves now. Which the long run, in the long term, and there'll still be a lot of pain going through it. We're not out of it yet, but there's I think we'll be a better place, like you say. I agree.
Some things I think will change. The exhibitions market, for instance, I think that was always going to change. It always had to change pretty soon anyway. And I think now it has to change really, really quickly. And it's going to be so interesting looking at what the big exhibition companies do next, and how they kind of reinvent themselves to stay as relevant as they were. that's going to be fascinating, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I see or think, and again, it's very sort of out there, well, prediction or trend, but and this could be quite controversial, is you pick up snippets of the presentations and conversations that, okay, COVID is here to stay, no question of that. It's a global pandemic. That's the big challenge. So how we do things around the world. But Chris Whitty, in his remarks on Monday evening, he dropped out, or it was said that basically cold flu kills between 5 and 20,000 people a year on average. So the average is around 9,000 people. We should be expecting of COVID to do the same. So it's that level of sort of expectation. But once we've got it under control, it's then, being able to cope with it and manage it. And I kind of the whole testing thing, so it'll be interesting for you. In the long-term future, I think will sort of drop off because it will become the norm. I think the wearing of masks and things like that, sensible, like you go to Asia, I did a lot of work out in Asia and Japan, places like that. It's normal for them. If they have a cold or a sore throat, they'll wear a mask. They're thinking of the other person. And I think that's, generally how we will become. Anyway, sorry, I'm rambling.
No,
talk about the process then of the testing, because I think the short term period, the next, even when we start to come back to life, for the first 6, probably 12, even 18 months, we're going to have quite a rigorous testing process in place, or not testing, but hygiene management process for delivering live events. So we need health and safety.
I think you're completely right. I think COVID isn't going to go anywhere. And I think what we'll probably see is a heightened awareness of or attention to hygiene at events going forward, probably indefinitely forever. So I think event organizers need to kind of equip themselves even more than they did previously with that kind of knowledge of how to run an event that minimizes the chance of transmission. I don't think that will go away at all. So one of the things that we have done is we've built with health and safety partners, we've built a digital training course and accreditation that covers, it's 3 hours long, so it's relatively quick and easy to do, but it covers the science of COVID, the basic science. It covers the government guidelines. As you can imagine, got lots of fun updating all of that content in the coming days. But then it also lays out the responsibilities both for an organizer and for a venue to minimize the chance of transmission at an event. And it's all built from content comes from a white paper that we have built in consultation with people in the events industry, some people on this call actually, but also agencies and public health bodies and industry associations and big venue groups and hotel groups, international hotel groups who, for instance, entered the first lockdown before we did. And what we have kind of built with these guys is a set of measures and protocols that if we all follow, we should minimize the risk of transmission. It covers face coverings, as you say, Richard, but also kind of sterilization and social distancing and hybrid event provision and food and beverage. And it's an online course that hundreds of events organizers have done it so far. In-house planners, agencies, and also venues as well. And I think for us, it has a dual purpose. And the second purpose is that it's all about building confidence, essentially, because I think that is the next big challenge for all of us, is to make people feel comfortable attending in-person events. And I think the more that we can all do to demonstrate that we've gone above and beyond to kind of learn the science and kind of get certified and get accredited, I don't think there's too much we can do on that, because there will always be people who are nervous coming to events. And I think we individually and we as a sector have to be really loud and demonstrate that we are, that we've thought about this and we know exactly what we're doing. I mean, we're already the people in the world probably that know that are going to be, well, hands down, going to be best at this anyway. But even so, I think the more we demonstrate that we've gone above and beyond on it, I think that's going to be really important to getting the sector back sooner rather than later and making people feel comfortable attending events.
Yeah, I think, as companies, so not even as the individual, but at the end of the day, as a company, the host company has a responsibility in health and safety to make sure and have the knowledge that as much care has been taken as possible. So to that point, event managers have a responsibility of care to make sure that they are up to speed from an education point of view. As I know the right things have been done. I'm comfortable and confident that we have done our best to, eliminate any risk. There will always be risk, but we have done our best. So I do think it's a really important factor that people go through a course. I know that we've got a working group within EMA who are putting together some checklists, but that still, to my mind, doesn't override the ability to, have something that is accredited. And what you guys have done is great. I know that we offer EMA members a discount on that. So well worth doing, guys. Part of your training, and it can be on your CV and everything else. Okay, cool. And it only takes 3 hours. Probably take me 9. Probably take me 9, but
yeah, you have to do a test at the end. So if you keep failing that, you can keep repeating it. Maybe it could take more than 3 hours. But the other thing it will also do, which I think is the other really important point, is we need to be great at communicating this, at communicating it as a sector in the media, and communicating it directly to our delegates. Because let's not forget, our delegates have a responsibility as well. Our attendees have a responsibility when they come to an event, because if they don't follow the kind of basic rules that we set out, that could present problems. So we really need to be able to communicate so effectively with everyone who's going to come to the event. We need the venues and the organisers and the delegates all to be really, really talking to each other in advance of the event and during the event, so that we can run it as safely as possible. And I think we did a hybrid event. It was about, when was it, Elliot? It was kind of July last year. We did a hybrid event, and one thing that we took loads of feedback afterwards. So we had about 25 people in the venue. We had the rest watching virtually, and we took lots of feedback afterwards about how kind of safe people felt, and kind of what they thought of that event, because this is right in the kind of the middle of the pandemic, and there were people that were nervous to come. And one thing that I really learned was that you just cannot emphasize enough how much you've done to keep those attendees safe at that event. So the pre-event comms is so important, but also when people arrive at the event, we had like a big thing saying, this is a safer event, a big screen banner. This is a safer event. These are the things that we have done to make you as safe as possible. We had people right at the door, wearing face coverings and doing temperature checks. And the second someone walked into that room, they were reminded that we as event organisers had done everything we possibly could. And that had the dual effect of making them feel more comfortable, but also making them remember that they also have a responsibility at that event to kind of follow the protocols. So that was a kind of a big learning. You can't over communicate it enough.
Okay, so have you been inundated with inquiries since Monday for events and venues? And if so, I saw yesterday, I think it was ETC venues had got over £2 million worth of bookings or something on Monday, Tuesday. That could be a little bit of spin. It could be true. Hopefully it's all come through you. But yeah, I mean, are people making inquiries? Are people starting to pencil in some dates? And I know, again, you've got some advice on that, but what are they asking for?
So
looking at venues, not event, but event
organisers. Yeah. So we have had we were thinking of doing a press release on the spike in business. We realised everyone had done it already. But yeah, we've massive increase almost immediately in inquiries, which is great to see. People want flexibility is the main thing. So people want to. So we have a call it kind of COVID cover, essentially, so that someone can book an in-person event with us for, say, the summer. If the government guidelines change and they can't host that in-person event, then we can switch it to a virtual event completely cost-free. And actually, interestingly, vice versa as well. People want to do a virtual event because they think that will be the right thing for, say, July or whenever it is. But if things are looking good in a month's time, then they'll be able to switch that into an in-person event again for kind of no fee. So that flexibility, I think, is really important. Elliot, anything else you've seen kind of particularly?
Yeah, so I mean, we were already kind of seeing a bit of a shift when we came back after New Year of people very tentatively looking at some in-person stuff towards the end of the year. We're quite lucky, we're quite set up at HireSpace that we have got a few different, we've got in-person, which we did that for how many years before all of this, and then virtual and hybrid, we've got those resources in-house now as well now. So we had a lot of people kind of coming to us saying, look, I'm starting to look at next year's Christmas party. This is plan A in person, but I also need you to drop a plan B and a plan C. And because we've got those resources to kind of pull in, we have been able to start doing that. So we noticed a little bit of an uptick in some of those inquiries, not to say massives, but in January we had the odd one. And then, yeah, we came in Tuesday morning and did have a very big amount of inquiries. I think we're having a lot of conversations in January. I think if you look at last year, everyone was so reactive all the time. You wasn't really planning more than 1 or 2 months in advance. And this year there was a really big shift in the fact that this isn't going anywhere anytime soon, but we can't just keep kind of being on the back foot a little bit. How do we kind of get ahead of this? And like Ed was saying, we're trying to do what we can to give organisers the peace of mind that they can feel confident to book events further than 2 months in advance and know that they have got alternative solutions should guidelines kind of permit certain things or not permit certain things. But yeah, I think the floodgates, well, I say floodgates, there was a lot of inquiries on Tuesday, and I think that just kind of shows that so much of the industry was just waiting for that kind of tentative green light. They've got their events planned out now, because I think January across the board, speaking to some other agencies, was quieter than expected, particularly after like the momentum that we felt we'd built in December, which was, with all the Christmas parties. I think January, everyone had a bit of a reset month. But, they've been formulating their plans and they're kind of ready to kind of send those inquiries in and start getting proposals and things, which is... So
Elliot, people, if we're looking at, let's look at the conferencing side, which again, we always look at being the biggest chunk of the pie. Are they just saying, I need a venue that could house 100 people, or are they asking for venues that have already sort of set up the studio system so they can do the hybrid? I personally think that's the first stage.
Yeah. So we're getting quite a lot. And again, this is normally where they ask for a couple of different proposals. So for instance, we looked at one last week. It's 300 in attendance, and they was like, can you send me through some venues that actually would host 1,000 people, some that would host 600 people, some that would actually host 300. So they've got a few different options depending on, what social distance. It's not until the end of the year, so obviously there could be a lot of distance then. The studio hybrid element, I know some venues have done this really well in kind of kitting themselves out with that technology, that almost like a plug and play, like a turnkey solution, which I think's working really well. So that's been attached to quite a lot of proposals as well. But yeah, it's kind of really just, rather than it just being the venue, I think it's really hard as well, because obviously budgets are still very much quite a contentious sticking point for a lot of people. It's, as organisers, we always kind of want to be as creative as possible and push the limits and things. But, the reality is this year that budgets have definitely been squeezed. And yes, fair enough, at the minute, for the next few months anyway, people are still having to just look at a virtual platform and how you broadcast that. But towards the end of this year, you're going to have those costs and venue costs as well. How do you balance the two and things like that? So I think that's still proving to be, well, budget's always a bit of a decisive factor anyway, but still very much so.
Okay, cool. So let's talk about the other side then, sort of things that people, there was a question in the chat from Anna about the vaccine passport. Any thoughts and views on that? I mean, I think it's quite a contentious thing within government. I'm guessing that we will be asking people that are coming internationally that they have to have had the vaccine before they come in, the same as other countries are asking us of going elsewhere, that we have to have them. But if I'm attending a conference in Birmingham, do I need to be turning up at that venue with some form of certification or whatever to show that I've had that jab? What's your thoughts and views on that? Because that's a
I can't see venues doing it. I might be wrong, but instinctively, there's something that I think there'll be better ways to make people feel safe than demanding people have a vaccine passport. In my opinion, I mean, there are many reasons people might not have a vaccine. There are cultural reasons. There are I can't quite see venues taking that kind of really hard line. I think there'll be better ways that they can confidently say that the attendees are safe. Be my view.
Yeah, because personally, I mean, I think, to me, I think, well, very happy to have a little card in my wallet, like an ID card. Said, yeah, look, I've had it. If you're asking for it, but you're right that there are reasons that some people haven't had it, health reasons, and cultural reasons, everything else. But so would they get refused entry or something like that? So it'd be an interesting thing. Interesting one. So sorry, I wanted to move on to the question about what sort of things are you being asked for, or the marketplace concept that you developed on finding things to do. I know everyone on here. I mean, I know Christopher's been doing lots of hospitality with his business or events for his clients. He's had behind the scene museum tours, wine tastings, cheese tastings, and it's finding those things to keep people engaged. I mean, Christopher, do you want to add to that, the sort of stuff that you have worked?
Yes, so I would say I'm probably in the more unique position where I would say 90% of my events are client facing rather than internal. So everything for me is about building the relationship between the client and the investment director, so the client ultimately trusts us more and gives us more money, which is why it's the experience, the face-to-face pieces for me, which are probably the bit that's been most missed this last year, and is what's going to be interesting for me is what that looks like going forward. So my events would be 750 at the Royal Academy for the summer exhibition. That's the type of thing we do. I'm looking into doing perhaps Alice in Wonderland towards the end of this year, if something live does come up again. So that's the interesting space for me to see what that's going to be like and what more we can do to engage people virtually if we can't do live events.
And what have you done then, Christopher? Some ideas? What because I know you've experimented with a few things, and what have really worked?
Yeah. So in the virtual space, luckily I've got a colleague, I've got a friend who is ex-managing director of Hearst Live magazine. So she was all about activation, and her contact list is amazingly good. So we've done Andy Warhol at the Tapes. We've had Ewan Venters, who's the outgoing CEO of Fortnum & Mason, do an in-person talk for us. We've got relationships with Sebastian Fawkes, the author, so he's done sort of like an in conversation type thing with us. So it's been a lot of talking heads type ones. And then we've worked with Davies, and we've done wine tasting. We've worked with a guy called Francis Gimlet, done sort of like cheese tasting type things. So so it's about sort of like high end, making them feel special.
Yeah, the wine tasting certainly worked for me. So Ed, what sort of inquiries have you got coming out? What wonderful new ideas have you come up with, or have you directed suppliers to think about and to produce?
Well, I mean, firstly, I think the employee engagement thing has been massive for the last 6 to 9 months, because it's been so hard for companies, it's been so hard for individuals, work from home, isolation. I think people have felt, Christmas was a great example. Even though the traditional Christmas party was completely off the menu, I think companies felt it was more important than ever to get people together and celebrate success in some way. So from a kind of employee engagement point of view, there's been masses. And then exactly as Christopher says, people still need to be engaging their clients. People still need to do hospitality to kind of keep hold of those relationships. So we did the big top Christmas party events at Christmas, where we did tens thousand people, multiple different time zones. And what was really great about that is we built an incredible kind of network of performers and entertainers, people who normally December would be their busiest time of year, but they were kind of almost completely out of work. But we were able to, I think we did 200 interviews, didn't we, Elliot? Something like that, in order to find a lot to get these like brilliant performers for the virtual Christmas party big top shows. So that was really popular, really successful. And then we thought, hang on, we've got all of this amazing talent. Companies still really, they want innovative ideas, they want kind of cool ways to engage people. So we thought we'll bring all of this forward, and we created an online marketplace essentially, where you can browse entertainment providers and wellness providers, browse them and click and book them in a few clicks. So that's been something that's kind of come of that real kind of demand or requirement on behalf of our clients to book these engaging virtual experiences. Elliot, you probably know some of the more exciting ones we've seen.
Yeah, it's such a fast changing world, because you think we have, like you said, the employee stuff, bringing teams together, touch points. That's been a really big thing for a little while now. But there is such a short attention span. Like, sometimes you speak to a client and they're like, "No, I've done that. Yeah, I've done that one." Because you think some people are doing. At one point, I think they were doing weekly sessions. I think that was probably a bit too much. I think we felt guilty of that as well. It was like, we need to be so engaged, and then it was a bit too much. But people are still doing kind of bi-weekly, monthly socials to bring people together. So you can kind of rack through, your wine tastings, your beer, you can do all the tastings. But yeah, so there's been a bit of a shift. It was kind of quiz, escape rooms were the kind of go-tos first of all. Then as we kind of led into Christmas, it was, things with a bit more of a boozy slant. So all those kind of a bit more of a party vibe, mixology and all those sorts of things. And then as we've come back this year, I think it's probably fair to say that everyone felt a bit of a touch of the January blues this year, more than they normally would. And I think with the announcement that virtual was here to stay for a bit longer, we had a lot of clients coming through to us saying, we actually want to do a really big drive on mental health and well-being. How can we do that virtually? So that's kind of a new category that's on the marketplace that Ed said about. So whether that's yoga or, like nutrition classes, best sleep practices and things like that, but doing that in a bit of a fun, engaging way.
How not to frothy your kids.
Well, yeah, there probably is someone to do that. I'm sure it's probably a need for a lot of people as well. Interestingly enough as well, like you mentioned Zoom fatigue, but we've had a few requests come through where people have said, look, I want to set the team an activity, but one that they can actually do in their own time, either with their families or things like that. So actually seeing a bit of an uptick in kind of crafty activities. For instance, one's like a pottery kind of craft where they'll still send you out all the kit of everything you need to do. There's a link where you can watch like a bit of a demo tutorial just in your own time. And then they can actually spend an evening, even if it's with the kids or partners, whoever it is, do that. And then they kind of make it a bit of a competition by submitting their finished master, pieces.
Now, I've heard of painting classes.
Yeah,
they'll send that you get sent your canvas and some paints, and then you.
Yeah.
So I think it's great.
Go to a bit of a different headspace, but also not have to do it in front of a Zoom camera as well. I think some people are kind of itching just for something that you can still kind of bring together before and after the event, but actually you can kind of complete in your own time. So we've had a little bit of an uptick in things like that. And then, yeah, following on from what Chris said, we've had a few clients say, the hospitality side, so many companies, we've recently had the Six Nations, haven't we, where people might take people to the Six Nations or, take them out and that side, like how do you keep your core stakeholders engaged? And that was something I know you guys have seen a bit of the Big Top platform, but that's had a big reimagining for things this year. It's so good for social stuff. And they actually created like a Six Nations themed event where you can kind of jump on there. You could watch the matches. They brought in some kind of ex-players and coaches. So it's a real unique experience of not just watching the match, but how you can heighten that and make it really work in a virtual setting. So we're looking at other ways to explore that kind of hospitality side of things, for the coming months as well.
Yeah, it's going to take a long time for that to get back to the total norm. If the stadium's sold out and 70,000-80,000 people at the stadium, even that. So
the way we did it was with kind of rooms. So you could so we'd show the game, but you could watch from a box, which is kind of six people. So for people who perhaps want a kind of quieter, more subdued, or just with a couple of friends, they could watch from a box.
Yeah.
So created a pub where you could jam in. Hundreds of people could all watch it kind of together in a kind of pub Zoom room. So different kind of ways that you could watch the rugby, depending on, or you could listen to the commentary depending on kind of what your preference is online. Which I think kind of ties to what you were saying, Richard, about how there's some people love this stuff, some people don't like it so much. If you're going to do something really effective for a whole company, you need to find a way to accommodate everyone.
Yeah. I mean, I've been watching the rugby, a big rugby fan, so watching the rugby. Signed up already for this Saturday but there'll be three of my mates. We'll all be sitting in our own respective homes and everything else, but WhatsApp video will be on the same thing. We'll set up a Zoom call, so we've got TV watching and we're still talking to one another as if we were there with a sparkling water in my hand.
Yeah.
That bit was a lie, Ed.
Yeah, I was gonna challenge that, Richard, but then I thought maybe I won't go there. But yeah.
No, I did dry January. That's it for me.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so on this platform, you can find lots of ideas and innovation. And can you challenge the question? So can I send something and sort of say, I like this, but what about this? I mean, are you guys helping to find unusual solutions, new ideas, and then?
Yeah, so a lot of clients will just use the marketplace, so they'll go on, they'll search by the category, so they might just want some kind of rough and tumble like entertainment, the bingo or the whatever it is, or some people will want them. So there's educational content on there. So we did stuff around. So we got stuff for International Women's Day, for LGBT+ month. We've got content around that. We've got stuff like even things like how to look after your voice on Zoom, for instance. There's a great class on that, and the lady takes you through all these kind of exercises. And so it's everything from the kind of educational and kind of wellness side to the to the more kind of fun, the horse racing and the wine tasting and that sort. So you can browse it and book, or what lots of clients do is just get in touch with us and say, hey, we want a program of events to engage our clients or to engage our colleagues over the next 6 to 9 months, and then we'll kind of hand select stuff and put a program together. And so what works in a couple of ways.
It's interesting to me that I think what we've all seen as well within big businesses is this sort of merger of lines of areas of responsibility, and how it's sort of morphing into the new norm or the new behaviors for companies. Because an event was an event, it might have been a conference or anything else, but then there was CSR, there was well-being, which perhaps sat more within HR. Of course, this is now showing that we all need to be talking to each other more to address the bigger challenges for our organizations, and things can't be left in silos, because we need to look after. So that the well-being thing you talked about, that Elliot, has very much come on much more stronger on the radar, because the working from home, working this environment, it has changed what we do and how we do it, and how we manage ourselves, the stresses we're under. You just don't know. So it's not like people come to the office from 9 till 5, I wish, and do their bit and then go home. We can forget about them. It's there were things going on, but now there's a greater emphasis on it, and a greater need for it,
isn't it? It's more common to speak about it. It's still got a way to go, but people are a lot more aware of those issues. And kind of shown. I'm working on an event next Friday, actually, where it's an employee appreciation event for a US company, but they said it's no games, but they just want to do it where their teams can come, feel rewarded and feel good. So they've got so many different sessions. We're doing it on our Big Top platform, but they've got different choices at the time. So you can either go do yoga or meditation, and then you go do those, or there's sleep nutrition, or you can book a postural alignment, because obviously everyone's working from home, probably in, depending on your office setup, your home office, slouching over.
Everyone just sits up a bit straighter suddenly when you say that, Elliot.
I think it's called Alexander technique or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because I find it's in my in my hips. I always find like I have to open my hips up a bit more, because you're kind of hunched over sort of thing. But so they just said we just want to have a real half-day session where it's all these kind of different ways of like listening to your body or your mind, and how best to kind of tackle those things. And I think that's pretty reflective of like the shift that we've seen since coming back this year, which has been good.
No, agreed. I'm looking to see if anyone's got any questions. I mean, it's a very small group. You can either just flick your camera on, flick your audio on, and come in, ask a question, got a comment they want to share or a thought. Please jump in. We'll give it another sort of 5-10 minutes before we put to a close. But no, I'm a great believer in the those sort of snippets of conversations around key topics, and having people drop into those to help people certainly on the mental well-being. And I think you can also you can use those things with clients as well. it doesn't have to just be an internal audience. Especially if you've got a keynote speaker talking about things of sharing thoughts. If you've got that like stuff you've done, Chris, that private audience, it feels like that private audience with somebody. I mean, I remember doing I'm going back 20 odd years, probably 30 years now. It was for a credit card business. We had a big thing on, but we had as a guest Henry Kissinger was there as the guest of the event. It was a weekend event, but you could have fireside chats with Henry Kissinger, and it was like 6 people. There was probably about 100 people there altogether. Very, very high net worth individuals. But of course, they were falling over themselves to have those little chats. And everything he said was exactly what he said to the other people, but it made you feel so important that you were there at the fireside with HK, and amazing. But still had his little dialogue that he stuck to and kind of wouldn't go off patter.
My question would be, what sort of months do you see the sort of large size internal events coming back? Because in a corporate, we're all sort of like skirting around each other because nobody wants to be the first person to do something big. So it's almost like we're all waiting for somebody to do it. What sort of month do you see something large scale, sort of like internal happening?
September, I think.
Probably.
I think there'll be smaller hybrid events before that, where you have 30, 40, maybe even up to even up to 100. I don't think there'll be that many that take advantage of that 1 month window, which is May to June, where you can do 1,000 people indoors. I don't see that happening, but I do see I do see smaller hybrid events, and I think that will be like the golden age of hybrid, or at least the first. The first we're all seeing of hybrid events in action. Larger events, I think September.
So do you see the because it is, I can't remember the date, sorry, that's terrible, but there is a date, isn't there? And it's the 21st of June, isn't it, or something? When they
21st or 23rd, I think, yeah.
Yeah, which is probably too late for the the corporate summer party, because kind of July, well, there could be still a few of those in July, and then of course then the holidays kick in. But I think if you've got outdoor marquees and stuff like that, people might. Do you think there'll be a call for those?
Yeah, so that's what's been coming quite a bit for quite a few bits in July, and very specific that they're looking for like a rooftop or an outdoor terrace and things like that. So not necessarily the indoor stuff that you were talking about, but I think even with those, I think we're still kind of treating those quite cautiously. Like I spoke to someone last week, I think it was like a 300 person summer social they wanted, and they were very like, this is what we're going to do. And I was like, that's great, let's aim for that. But I think we should have a plan B. And they were like, but we don't, they were kind of like, it just kind of shows how different people take in different bits of information, but they were kind of like, oh, but this is going to be fine by then. Sorry, I think that's my, just going to shut that off.
Yeah, and it might be fine to host them, but the question is, will people come? So I think, you'll need a facility for, let's say, 400 or 500, but you probably get 150, 200 people come.
Yeah.
And you need that extra space, which would be lovely, because it would be lovely to be stood outside, in a garden, on a roof terrace, saying hello to people at arm's length with a glass of wine.
Oh.
And are you seeing people be more flexible with contracts for stuff that's happening in June, or are you seeing them a bit more rigid?
So venues, I'd say across the board, have been really super accommodating since this whole thing kind of happened. You've always got the odd venue that will chance things and sneak things in, but when you kind of push certain things, they're obviously happy to, they're trying to be as flexible as possible. And I think in the same way that we're saying we need to do what we can to be as flexible, venues are in exactly the same boat, because if they're not flexible, they're just going to move to another venue that is. So generally across the board, we're not finding too much pushback on those. They are willing to kind of enter that discussion and add those caveats in. And yeah, I think that's just where we're playing a bit more of an advisory role, to be honest, at the minute, because even though, like I said, we've got these dates and that's great, it's definitely something to kind of base things on and make some plans, but there are still a lot of asterisks to Boris's statement. Things, I know we've got the 5 weeks between, but they could end up becoming 6, 7 weeks, depending on what goes on. So it's not a fixed date. So it is, I think that's why we're kind of saying September, because then it still gives you that couple of months leeway that, be aware that this could potentially go fully virtual again. We might not be at that stage. So that's just where we're having to kind of bring some people back down to the reality a little bit, I guess, before we get too carried away.
Yeah. Anna, so you got your hand raised. I was just about to say, does anybody want to jump in before I wrap and sort of say, share with some of the stuff that they're either starting to pencil in and book, how their company's behaving? Anna, do you want?
I just wondered about the testing piece. I know we spoke about the vaccine passports, or it might look like an app or something. I know we covered that. What about testing on site? Do we think that that's going to be done? Sorry, it's my phone. Do we think that that's going to be done? And where does the onus sit? Is it with the company and the event organisers? Are we going to have to bring medical professionals in to do testing on site? Does it sit with the venue? I mean, how does that look? Because if they're saying that we can all get together and theoretically we can have 300 people sitting next to each other at a dinner on the 22nd of June, yet the rest of the population is not going to be vaccinated until the end of July. So there's a disparity there of a good 6 to 8 weeks between that, and it's a not mandatory vaccination. So what about actual, the lab tests and things on site?
I'll have to jump in on that. So I actually have a call with a testing company and later this afternoon, which is going to be really interesting. I'm not convinced the technology is widely available on the market yet that is going to be a silver bullet for the event sector. I think what we have out there at the moment is either prohibitive from a accuracy point of view or from a cost and logistics point of view. Either it's not going to guarantee that people are COVID free, or you need hundreds of people to test people effectively, and it just doesn't work from a cost point of view. So I actually do think that testing could make a big difference, but I don't think we've quite seen the technology yet. I think there's technology at the moment that will allow multiple people to be tested at once, for instance, with a lamp test, which is really accurate. I think when we have that, I think it could make a big difference. But I know there's discourse around at the moment that says you can test someone 48 hours or 72 hours in advance and then still hold the event, which I'm personally a little bit skeptical of, because I think there'll always be people a bit nervous about that.
There was a very good discussion on MySbook yesterday, and Chetan had 3 health and safety experts talking about exactly this and the testing, and even there was stuff about there's a new mouthwash, and so they were talking about these things, about the process and then the timings of them and the impact on a live event. Very much, I think the majority of the conversation was more around sort of consumer events, because they also, they will lead the way. But I sent a link to Priya, so I said we should share that on our EMA. You can go back in and watch it. But it was a very good discussion, and so, like you were saying, Ed, market experts in that of how they're now planning to bring that back for large public events, which would then, also would they be mandatory for corporate events or not? Because that's the one thing, is that, yeah.
We did a quick guide, actually. I'll put it in the chat, just of the kind of basics, if anyone's interested.
Yeah, and Rick from Smile was talking last week of the different testers you can use, and one is, I can't remember which one he was saying now, one is better than the other, or one is quicker, but it's still 15 or 20 minutes for it to turn into a result. But then you've also got the person there already, and if you've got 100 people or 200 people coming into a venue, how much longer does that then take to get those people in? So yeah.
I think that, so I think you're kind of doing it in pods. So you have say 7 people who are kind of pod, and then that makes everything way quicker, and you can test everyone at once, essentially. So I think that something like that might be the way forward. Makes things much quicker and cheaper.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you partly you could say, well, please, if you attend the event, only attend if you have had your vaccines, or and then if you haven't and you want to be you could be tested on site. That's an option for people that haven't had a vaccine. We can check them. you could offer the mouthwash to everybody as they come in, which is, yeah. I think that's all part of that process still, that we're trying to work out what is going to be, is there going to be legal requirements? I think there'll be some government guidelines. I mean, the government are working to this themselves with their G7 summit in June. So there will be guidelines from them, but it's then going to be up to individual adaptation. And I think that's where you need to be thinking about, okay, what do we as a company then want to mandate for our events? So guys, I'm going to sort of start to look to wrap that on that very somber note. But I think, Ed, your point of saying your pre-event communication is so important. So like you said, when you did your hybrid event, this is a safe event. This is what we have done. And of course, then also, this is what we expect of you as an attendee, and that you respect and everybody else. I think so. Yeah, that's part of that communication, is that, you know, we are doing our best to make this set. Here are the guidelines we're doing. We're going to ask you to follow these guidelines as an attendee at this event.
Yeah, exactly. And if you do the course, you get a delegate communication pack and that kind of stuff, just to make it all easier.
Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, as always, thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody. Don't forget Tuesday with Mark. Mark Gill is going to talk more about the hybrid event and share with some of the stuff that he's doing at Goldman Sachs and how they're approaching it, and also ask them questions and advice from each other. So that's a leadership event if you're part of that leadership group on Tuesday morning. And then Thursday, we changed the time to an afternoon session. We thought that would be an interesting test, but very much on the sustainability discussion with our sustainability committee and Melanie Delaponche as our guest speaker on that. And that again is a really important discussion. So thank you very much. Elliot, Ed, as always, good to speak to you guys. Thanks so much for sharing your insights.
Thanks, Richard.
All right, guys. Thanks.
Bye, guys.
See you soon.
Bye.